When the first Boeing B-29 Superfortresses appeared over Japan in mid-1944, Japanese officers dismissed them as too slow and too few to matter. But on the night of March 9 to 10, 1945, 334 B-29s under General Curtis LeMay carried out Operation Meetinghouse, dropping incendiaries that ignited Tokyo's wooden districts and killed over 100,000 civilians. It became the most destructive air raid in human history, all accomplished without a single atomic weapon. June 15, 1944. Chengdu, China. The heat rises from the concrete runway as the first Boeing B-29 Superfortresses of the 58th Bomb Wing thunder into the humid air. Each aircraft, its silver fuselage glinting in the afternoon sun, carries nearly 20,000 pounds of fuel and bombs, a marvel of engineering that few had ever seen in flight. Ground crews of the U.S. Army Air Forces step back, shielding their faces from the blast of four Wright R-3350 engines as the machines lift steadily toward the horizon. For the first time in the war, the Japanese home islands are within reach of American bombers. The operation, codenamed Matterhorn, has taken months of preparation and thousands of tons of supplies hauled over the Himalayan hump. The target for this first raid, the Imperial Steel Works at Yada, on the northern tip of Kyushu. On June 16, radar operators near Kagoshima report unidentified aircraft approaching at 30,000 feet. At 11:59 p.m., the first B-29s cross the coast. Japanese searchlights sweep the sky, followed by the crackle of Type 88 anti-aircraft guns. A single bomber, Ding Hao, commanded by Major Robert K. Morgan, the same man who flew the famed Memphis Belle, releases its payload over Yada. The bombs fall through thin cloud, striking the target area but causing limited damage. At dawn, Japanese officers of the 19th Air Defense Headquarters review the damage reports. Only one factory shed and a few houses have burned. The raid is dismissed in official briefings as harmless and sporadic. Newspapers the following morning call the B-29 a lumbering giant, too slow to evade Japan's air defenses, too few to threaten the empire's industry. In truth, many of the bombers never made it back. Fuel shortages, engine fires, and monsoon weather forced dozens to turn back or crash land in India. Yet, behind the setbacks, U.S. commanders saw potential. General Henry Hap Arnold ordered the XXI Bomber Command, under Brigadier General Haywood Hansell, to relocate operations to the Mariana Islands once captured. There, the B-29 could strike Japan directly, without reliance on the perilous China supply lines. By late 1944, the Pacific front had shifted. Saipan, Tinian, and Guam were secured after fierce battles, and their runways stretched longer than any before. From these bases, the distance to Tokyo was just over 1,500 miles, a range perfectly suited for the Superfortress. In November 1944, the first mission from the Marianas took flight. 45 B-29s of the 73rd Bomb Wing, commanded by General Hansell, set course for the Nakajima Aircraft Engine Plant in Musashino, a suburb of Tokyo. The bombers climbed to 30,000 feet, relying on high-altitude precision bombing, a doctrine Hansell firmly believed in. But jet stream winds of 200 miles per hour scattered the formations. Bombs missed by miles. Only a handful hit the intended factory. Back in Tokyo, the damage was again minimal. Lieutenant General Torishiro Kawabe of the Imperial General Headquarters noted in his diary that the American air raids lack seriousness. Some staff officers mocked the effort, saying, "They waste fuel to drop their bombs into rice fields." Yet on the American side, leadership was changing. In January 1945, General Curtis LeMay, known for his uncompromising discipline and innovative tactics, assumed command of the XXI Bomber Command. He studied the failures closely. Reports showed that high-altitude precision bombing was nearly useless against dispersed wooden cities under the jet stream's fury. LeMay made a decision that would redefine aerial warfare. The B-29s would fly lower, carry incendiaries instead of explosives, and strike Japan's cities directly at night. The first target would be Tokyo. February 25, 1945. Guam, Mariana Islands. The briefing room at the XXI Bomber Command Headquarters is silent except for the whir of ceiling fans. General Curtis LeMay stands before a large map of Japan, his cigar balanced between two fingers. The men gathered before him, wing commanders, weather officers, and operations chiefs, wait for his orders. "We've been doing it wrong," LeMay says flatly. "High-altitude precision doesn't work when the wind throws our bombs 20 miles off target. We'll go in low at night, strip the guns, load incendiaries, and burn out their production centers." It is a radical order. The B-29, designed for high-altitude flight, will now descend to between 5,000 and 8,000 feet, well within range of anti-aircraft fire. The aircraft will carry M69 incendiary bomblets, napalm-filled cylinders engineered to ignite upon impact and spread through wooden structures. Japanese cities, built largely of wood and paper, will burn with frightening efficiency. LeMay's decision is based on data, not conjecture. Reports from previous raids on Hankow, China, and Hamburg, Germany, had demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of incendiaries in dense urban zones. But he knows the moral weight of his plan. In a letter to General Arnold, LeMay writes, "There is no virtue in destroying cities for their own sake, but if this ends the war sooner, it will save lives on both sides." The first trial comes on March 9, 1945. Target: the heart of Tokyo's industrial wards, Shidamachi, an area housing small workshops producing aircraft parts, munitions, and military tools. Intelligence photos show an endless maze of wooden dwellings packed along narrow alleys. At 5:34 p.m., aircrews begin their final preparations on Tinian Island, where rows of B-29s stretch across the horizon. Mechanics remove all defensive turrets except the tail gun to lighten the load. Ground crews roll out E-46 cluster bombs, each containing dozens of M69 incendiary bomblets. The lead aircraft, Straight Flush, commanded by Captain Robert Morgan, will mark the target with napalm flares. Before takeoff, LeMay gives one final directive: no formation flying. No altitude discipline. Get in, drop, and get out. At 7:48 p.m., engines roar to life. One by one, 334 B-29 Superfortresses rise into the night sky, their navigation lights blacked out. The mission, officially codenamed Operation Meetinghouse, is underway. As the bombers approach the Japanese coast, radar operators in Chiba Prefecture detect faint signals. Civil defense sirens begin to sound across Tokyo just before midnight. Few heed them. Residents have grown accustomed to small-scale raids that seldom reach the city center. At 12:08 a.m., March 10th, Straight Flush releases its first canisters over the eastern wards. Within minutes, hundreds of B-29s follow, each dropping their loads in carefully staggered lines across the city. The first fires take hold near the Sumida River, where factories and homes ignite almost simultaneously. The firestorm builds faster than anyone anticipated. Witnesses later recall the night sky glowing orange for miles. Winds exceeding 50 miles per hour fan the flames through neighborhoods like Honjo, Fukagawa, and Asakusa. Firefighting brigades attempt to respond, but the heat forces them back. Water mains rupture, hoses melt. Inside the Imperial Palace, Emperor Hirohito is awakened by distant rumbling. From his window, he can see a red glow over the eastern horizon. In his diary, his aide-de-camp, General Takeshi Mori, records, "The city is burning. The sound of bombs continues without pause." From the air, navigator 2nd Lieutenant Raymond D. Lambert aboard, American-made, later described the sight. "The whole city looked like a carpet of fire, as if the ground itself had turned molten." By dawn, Tokyo's eastern districts have vanished under columns of smoke reaching 25,000 feet. The crews return to Tinian exhausted, many shaken by what they have witnessed below. LeMay receives the mission reports. Only 14 aircraft lost, mostly to mechanical issues. Damage assessment photos arrive within hours. Over 16 square miles of Tokyo, nearly 1/4 of the city, lie in ashes. Industrial production in the area has ceased entirely. It is the single most destructive air raid in human history. March 10, 1945. Tokyo, Japan. The sun rises over a city unrecognizable. From Ueno to Koto, the skyline that once shimmered with tile roofs and tram wires is now flattened and gray. Smoke drifts low over the Sumida River, hanging like fog. The air smells of damp ash and scorched timber. The only sounds are the soft crunch of debris beneath sandals and the distant ring of a bicycle bell, one of the few that survived the night. Japanese police reports compiled that morning describe the scene in measured language. Destruction over a wide area. Communication interrupted. Civil defense personnel overwhelmed. Yet the scale of the disaster defied the limits of bureaucracy. Over 100,000 civilians had perished, more than in the bombings of Dresden, Hamburg, or any single raid of the war. More than 1 million people were left without homes. Tokyo's municipal fire brigade, trained and disciplined, had been rendered powerless. The flames moved faster than any hose line could follow. A post-raid survey conducted by the Tokyo Fire Department concluded that no measure of water supply or manpower could have altered the outcome. At the Imperial Palace, Emperor Hirohito received the first detailed report from the Home Ministry at 10:15 a.m. He listened quietly as aides described the scale of destruction. Later that day, the Emperor's chief advisor, Koichi Kido, noted in his diary, "His Majesty appeared deeply troubled." He asked if the people had been warned sufficiently. Across the Pacific, the reaction was different. In Guam, General LeMay and his staff gathered in the command briefing hall to examine reconnaissance photographs taken hours after the attack. The images showed vast areas of Tokyo reduced to light gray ash. LeMay pointed to one photo and said simply, "This is proof. We have found their weakness." Official U.S. Air Force assessments confirmed it. The Tokyo raid had destroyed 267,000 buildings, including hundreds of small factories crucial to Japan's aircraft and ordnance production. Despite the enormous civilian toll, military analysts noted that the concentration of dispersed war industries in residential wards had effectively been wiped out. On March 11, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt received an intelligence summary from the Joint Chiefs of Staff detailing the raid's outcome. The report called it an overwhelming success in terms of industrial incapacitation. Roosevelt, already ill and nearing the end of his presidency, read it silently before setting the folder aside. According to his aide Harry Hopkins, the president's only remark was, "If it ends the war sooner, it must be endured." Meanwhile, in Japan, the reaction within the military command was conflicted. Many officers, including Lieutenant General Kawabe, continued to believe that morale, not material, would determine Japan's fate. In a meeting recorded by the Imperial Army's Operations Bureau, Kawabe stated, "Even if 1,000 of our cities burn, we must continue. Spirit cannot be bombed." But others, like Navy Minister Mitsumasa Yonai, privately feared what was coming. He told his aide, "If Tokyo can be erased in one night, no city in Japan is safe." American analysts quickly followed up with post-mission assessments. Meteorological reports noted that a cold, dry wind had created ideal conditions for the firestorm, a factor that would be considered for future raids. Engineers at Wright Field in Ohio studied the effectiveness of the M69 incendiary clusters and recommended continued use. LeMay wasted no time. Within 48 hours, his staff planned similar raids on Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe, and other major industrial centers. The campaign's logic was clear: destroy Japan's ability to produce, supply, and resist. On March 12, as Tokyo's survivors began gathering what little remained of their lives, new air raid sirens sounded in Nagoya. The firebombing campaign had begun. March 12, 1945. Nagoya, Japan. Just 2 nights after Tokyo's devastation, radar stations in Aichi Prefecture detect another wave of incoming aircraft. The Japanese defense network, still reeling from the Tokyo raid, scrambles to respond. Anti-aircraft crews take up positions along the Shonai River, while searchlights sweep the low clouds. At 11:40 p.m., the first of 310 B-29 Superfortresses from the 314th Bomb Wing appears overhead. Their target is clear: Nagoya's Mitsubishi Aircraft Works, a major producer of the A-6M0 fighter. But under LeMay's revised plan, the attack once again focuses on the broader urban area. Within an hour, the city's eastern wards are engulfed in flames. Official Japanese civil defense logs note: entire blocks vanished in minutes. Wind carried sparks for kilometers. The following nights bring similar destruction to Osaka on March 13th to 14th, and Kobe on March 16th to 17th. Each raid follows the same method perfected over Tokyo: low-altitude night attacks using E-46 incendiary clusters. In Osaka alone, 8 square miles of the city disappear, crippling heavy industry and leaving nearly 400,000 homeless. From the air, crews describe an unsettling pattern: every city, from Nagoya to Kobe, reacts almost identically. The glow begins in one district, then spreads until the landscape becomes an unbroken sea of orange. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Morgan, flying on one of the Osaka missions, later said in an official interview, "You didn't need flares. The fire lit your instruments from below." At the Imperial General Headquarters in Tokyo, the shock is profound. General Yashijiro Yumizu, Chief of the Army General Staff, receives continuous updates through the night. When an aide reports that half of Osaka's industrial zone is gone, Yumizu replies quietly, "So, it has come to this." Japanese fighter response remains limited. The Nakajima Ki-44 Shoki and Kawasaki Ki-61 Hien interceptors struggle to reach the B-29's at their lower altitudes, and radar coordination between cities remains inconsistent. Fuel shortages and damaged airfields further hampered defensive efforts. By late March, Japanese commanders can do little but watch as city after city burns. Meanwhile, in Guam and Tinian, LeMay's staff operates like clockwork. Ground crews work day and night to rearm, refuel, and repair the bombers. Each mission launches with precise timing, one wing taking off every 2 minutes. Maintenance officers calculate that nearly 80% of available aircraft are operational at any given moment, an unprecedented figure in modern warfare. The U.S. High Command monitors progress closely. General Henry Hap Arnold, still in Washington, cables LeMay on March 20th. "Your results are excellent. Continue operations with all possible vigor." But not everyone in the American ranks is comfortable with the new strategy. Some senior officers privately question the ethics of area bombing. Brigadier General Loris Norstad, LeMay's chief of staff, later recalled, "We discussed it often. But the orders were clear: end the war, shorten the suffering." By early April, the results are undeniable. The 5 major industrial cities, Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe, and Yokohama, have lost more than 50% of their urban area. Japanese military production drops by nearly 1/3 within weeks. The Ministry of Munitions reports to Prime Minister Kuniaki Koiso that small-scale war industries have ceased to function in most regions. Yet even as Japan's economy falters, the government maintains a public face of resilience. Radio Tokyo broadcasts patriotic songs and messages of endurance. Newspapers urge citizens to rebuild. In one edition of Asahi Shimbun, an editorial reads, "The capital may burn, but the spirit of Japan cannot be extinguished." In April 1945, as Allied forces close in on Okinawa, LeMay shifts focus to secondary industrial centers: Toyama, Kagoshima, Niigata, and Akashi. Each raid follows the now familiar pattern: low altitude, incendiary saturation, swift withdrawal. By midsummer, more than 60 Japanese cities have been struck. At the same time, reconnaissance aircraft photograph barren landscapes where once bustling cities stood. Analysts at the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey begin to compile data for post-war evaluation. One entry, dated July 10, notes, "Urban Japan has effectively ceased to exist as a functional industrial network." Yet, despite the devastation, surrender does not come. Inside the Imperial Palace, Prime Minister Suzuki's cabinet debates endlessly. Army Minister Kurechika Anami insists that the homeland must defend itself to the last man. LeMay, meanwhile, continues planning. His bombers have reshaped Japan's cities, but the war, he knows, is not yet over. July 26, 1945. Guam, Mariana Islands. The briefing room of the 20th Air Force is filled with maps layered in red circles, each marking a Japanese city already attacked. General Curtis LeMay stands before them, his uniform neat, his tone precise. On his desk lies the final set of directives from Washington: maintain maximum pressure until surrender. Behind the blunt wording lies a truth that all in the room understand: Japan's cities are nearly gone, but its government still refuses to yield. By this point, the campaign has reached its peak intensity. Between March and August 1945, the B-29’s of the XXI Bomber Command have carried out more than 60 incendiary raids, destroying over 40% of Japan's 66 largest urban centers. Nearly 9 million people are displaced. Factories, transportation lines, and communication hubs lie in ruins. LeMay reviews reconnaissance photos of Toyama, attacked on August 1 by 173 B-29’s. The city, an important producer of aluminum and machine tools, is 99.5% destroyed. The next day, Hakioji and Mito are struck. Analysts confirm that Japan's light industrial network has effectively ceased functioning. Still, the Imperial Army remains defiant. In Tokyo's underground command bunker, General Kurechika Anami and Chief of Staff Yashijiro Yumizu discuss the American raids. Records from post-war interrogations show Anami declaring, "We will continue. Even if 100 million perish, the nation will endure." But beneath this defiance, the Japanese government is faltering. Emperor Hirohito, increasingly isolated, receives a series of reports from the Home Ministry describing the humanitarian crisis across the country. One document dated July 30 states, "Major cities lack water and food. Refugees number in the millions. Epidemics are expected." The emperor, according to his aide-de-camp General Takeshi Mori, reads these lines in silence before saying only, "This cannot continue." Meanwhile, in Washington and Guam, preparations for a new phase of warfare unfold, one that will soon overshadow all that came before. Even so, the strategic bombing campaign remains relentless. LeMay's forces continue their nightly assaults, combining incendiary raids with daylight precision attacks on rail yards, arsenals, and oil refineries. The objective is clear: to force Japan's surrender before an invasion of the home islands becomes necessary. On August 6, word reaches Guam of a new kind of weapon used over Hiroshima. LeMay's staff, initially skeptical, soon receives confirmation: a single bomb has leveled an entire city. 3 days later, Nagasaki meets the same fate. For the first time, LeMay's bombers are ordered to stand down. The scale of destruction from these two atomic strikes eclipses even the most devastating incendiary missions. Yet LeMay's own contribution, the systematic annihilation of Japan's industrial base, had already set the stage for Japan's capitulation. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito's voice is broadcast across the nation. In his Gyokyoan Hoso, imperial rescript on the termination of the war, he states, "The enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which is incalculable. Should we continue to fight, it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization." He does not mention the firebombing campaign directly, but its effects are felt in every word. By that date, more than 67 Japanese cities have been devastated, and millions of civilians displaced. In the days following the surrender, U.S. survey teams arrive in Tokyo and other major cities. Among them is the United States Strategic Bombing Survey, USSBS, tasked with evaluating the results of the campaign. Their final report concludes, "The attacks on urban Japan achieved the systematic dislocation of the nation's economy. The destruction of housing and industrial areas contributed directly to the collapse of Japan's capacity to wage war. For Japan, recovery would take decades. For the airmen of the 73rd, 314th, and 313th Bomb Wings, the memory of those missions would remain for life. A mixture of professional pride and solemn reflection. General LeMay, questioned after the war about the morality of his strategy, replied with characteristic bluntness, "If we'd lost the war, I'd have been tried as a war criminal. Fortunately, we were on the winning side." His words, recorded in the official U.S. Air Force oral history collection, reflect not arrogance, but the cold logic of wartime decision-making. Operation Meetinghouse and the subsequent incendiary campaign remain, to this day, the most devastating conventional bombing effort in human history. It demonstrated the terrifying potential of air power, and forever altered the ethical boundaries of modern warfare.